Hello, hello. These are Otocinclus fry at 4 weeks. There are 5 of them in this tank. Hopefully my audio is coming through all right. Um, I just want to try to see if I can get a better look at this here. It's pretty good. Busy, busy. We'll go into the paperwork here, but before we get into chasing them on camera, these are much more cooperative than the now 5-day-old fry that are in the other tank. Uh, they're just all over the place. They're all over the place. So these guys actually sit still for a few minutes here and there, but they're very healthy. I believe I have 1 male and 4 females in this tank. It's kind of a bold statement to sex them this early, but you can just kind of tell on the growth, like how fast they get certain sizes, because they're so small to begin with. Normally looking at something this small, you'd be like, yeah, whatever. But I mean, they really don't get much bigger. They'll maybe triple that size, somewhere around there. Yeah, quadruple maybe. But anyway, it's enough now that you can actually tell. Um, so yeah, this tank was my third breeding. It was more of a test to see. People were complaining about not being able to get adequate information on where you draw the line breeding them and what kind of conditions. People were having successes doing this, that, the other thing, and some of them were talking about water changes. Other people were talking about different parameters within the tank, and I think there's a lot of different things that come into play with this particular fish, getting them to spawn readily, and then that is kind of the easy part. The tricky part is getting the mortality rates down, and I think that this tank was a good representation of what not to do, because this tank has silicate sand in it, and as good as the filtration was, there just were too many solids that were within the tank when they were fried on day 1 and 2 that they just choked on. I think I have like 40% mortality rate, and you could see some of them literally choking to death, like just free swimming, swimming around within the current, not actually attached to anything, just kind of in their last throes, and it's tough to watch. And I think a lot of people that breed them they might have capped their tank, their substrate with sand, or maybe they got a bunch of dragonstone in their tank, or they've got something in their tank that just really breaks down a lot of solids. And yeah, that's the lesson learned from this tank. Um, my second one was all glass, and it sucked. They were freaked out. They didn't like it, and I had higher mortality rates. And the conditions I thought were more ideal. My total dissolved solids were at like 150, and my nitrates were at like maybe 4, somewhere around there. It was ideal, but I only had a few planted uh, swords in little cups in the tank, and that was it. And it just wasn't enough. I think I had a piece of cholla wood in there too, but uh, no, it didn't work out at all. I just thought that um, from having tanks in the past where you let them go with high light and you get a lot of algae buildup for, you say if you're growing algae on wood for a big placo or something like that in another tank, that you can, you can put somebody in there and they just go to town on it. So it's good. It's good food source. So um, I just figured this would this would work out. Um, you know, more poorly than an all glass tank, but it really was the opposite. The algae on the glass just wasn't enough, and I'll get into that. Um, but back to this tank. I'm gonna pop out the camera here and see if I can get a better look at everybody. It's kind of tough working with what I got. So we got, put this down here. Got a good focus on the back there, and that's where they all are pretty much. So we get that one there, yeah, just took off. We got that one there, it's number 2. I believe that's the male, right there, very small. Then we've got that one there, number 3. And number 4 up there in the top corner. And number 5 is being elusive somewhere at the moment. I think, well, maybe this right here. Right there above the foam in the corner of the glass, might be number 5 there. But anyway, get that down to one of them sitting still. They're pretty decent growth rate, I gotta say, for week 4. Doing pretty good. Pretty satisfied. Okay, so I should try to keep at least one of them on camera while I'm talking about this, right? Success notes, my personal success notes that I've taken from a glass tank, from a mostly silicate sand tank with all the fixings, um, and then a heavily planted tank with Eco Complete and petrified wood. I think of all 3, I've had the most success with the last one, and um, yeah, I shouldn't get too far ahead of myself, but breeding tubes, are definitely important. You can have all different kinds of breeding tubes. Um, I think that the small uh, tubular brown ones that you can get, just off of Amazon. Those are good. Um, I went and got myself. I went and saw a glass maker and had custom tubes made because I wanted a canary yellow for my neocaridina. Excuse me. So I can go down and take a look at one of those right now. So yeah, that would be one of them right there, and it's fairly large. It's 1 inch, but you can go half inch. I think most of the ones you get on Amazon are half inch. Um, but that's very important. Definitely, that's a must. See if I can fight this thing back. Um, and once you've got a group of autos that you've watered, say you've got 5 or 6, you're new to it, and you see there's some activity or whatever. Maybe there's a male chasing one female around more than others. That's your opportunity to make a decision on what you want to do, because they're going to breed. They're going to try to anyway, and you're going to end up, with a glass tank scenario where you get, 3 or 4 healthy fry that come back, and then you end up with maybe 2 by the time you're all said and done. Um, or you could follow some steps and segregate them, and that's what I would recommend. It's definitely segregate them. Uh, you want to have a species only tank, and um, you know, I think if you are interested in doing this, you should go full speed ahead and just take a planted tank that you've got and get everybody out of it and just do this to know that you can do it and do it right with high numbers, or you can just wing it. It's no problem. Any one of these things that I go over are going to be helpful, and any one of them might be, successful in getting you a few anyway. So I'm not going to go, and be uh, over stressing certain things. I'm just going to talk about things that worked for me. So absolutely segregating them is number one for me, and then a lot of people, when they have this dancing occur, where the male's chasing the female, and they start to have, like a breeding dance happening. Uh, they attribute it to a water change. A lot of people do, and they don't understand why it happened, but they know that that was definitely something that helped. And I think that the most important thing to take out of that is that it's not just a happy accident. It's true. It works, and it works because it's most likely removing a hormone from the tank, and it's not anything to do uh, with your nitrates lowering your suddenly, um, altering your pH, or the temperature, or the TDS, or anything like that. I think really it's just about removing a hormone and replacing water that doesn't have it in it. So that the fish give off um, growth hormones to regulate their growth. I believe that females probably give off other hormones to regulate, um, you know, their breeding habits, and I think that doing a water change causes a lot of people to see that activity suddenly, and they wonder what happened. And I think that's why um, changing the environment around slightly, maybe flipping a piece of wood during this process, is helpful. Um, Another thing too is that say you're a person that's got an obsession and you've got a lot of tanks and you have got autos in several tanks and you know you've got a pair in one of them and you just so happen you've got a new tank that you've set up. Well, as soon as that's 2 weeks old and you're planted and you're in um, you're in business as far as a decent cycle, and you know you've got most of your waste from immersion gone with from your new plantings. It can be right in the middle of almost the peak of it, as long as you know it's just about over with. Um, it's prime time. You put a pair in there, and it's breed time. That's uh, uh, that's my tank number one and tank number four. Both times high numbers. Um, and then the 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 planted tank that I'm getting this latest batch from, which I think is five, something like that. That is in a 40-gallon breeder, which is about 5 or 6 weeks old, somewhere around there. So again, you know, same thing. So and it was a control pair that went in all four tanks. This pair is unbelievable. So I got lucky with that, but they have produced in different mortality rates in different conditions in different tanks. So I've gotten the results that I've wanted to make a channel and go forward with this. And removing the hormone out of the water is definitely something that makes it happen. So the presence of a sword plant, any kind of sword plant, uh, is, I think, their go-to. I think that's when they're done chasing each other around. The first thing that they're going to do, the female maybe, is going to go look for a sword plant. And if there isn't one there, we'll just make do with something else. But in my tanks, when I've seen them mating, they've had Anubias, they've had Val, they've had um, different leaves, they've had foam, they've had tubes, cholla wood, backs of heaters, filter intakes. Well, it's, you know, a lot of things. They've had a lot of things, and all in one tank, and they went right for the sword every time. So um, the swords that the eggs do well on are swords that have wide leaves, like your melon swords. Um, yeah, they seem to hold the egg better than the narrow leaf, um, and it seems to have a better hatching environment. So I maybe like because the narrow leaves are a little more dense in their growth, and I think that the broad leaves, excuse me, are just allow for more current to go through them. If that makes any more sense. So um, yeah, the other plants that uh, they might spawn on are the undersides of like coffee coffeefola, um, some parts of driftwood, but it's I never see any good success on anything other than a nice sword. So uh, when going forward with your planted tank that you are freshly cycling and you're ready to throw in some new fish and you know you've got an algae bloom coming and you want to get things under control, and then boom, you get this done at the same time that you freshen up a new tank for somebody else. So hopefully you'll be nice and put a community fish in there so that when the fry are grown up, they don't get eaten. But that's another story. So when you do have this introduction that takes place in this new tank, or if you are draining your existing tank and doing a water change to initiate this, you should be taking note that there's a lot of biofilm and detritus in the tank already. If there isn't, um, don't put them in there, or add from another tank. Nice piece of Malaysian driftwood, not cholla wood, not that thin stuff. Excuse me, don't forget the name eludes me at the moment. But just a nice piece of Malaysian driftwood. Slate would do if it was on like a nice flat piece, flat to the surface of the light, and had caught a lot of algae and had a lot of biofilm and detritus on it, and wasn't visited by anybody. Then yeah, take that piece out. That'll work. Um, but you gotta have an introduction of something like that along with the water change. Um, day 1 and 2, they're not going to go for anything else. And if there's anything on that biofilm, forget it. High mortality rates. So you want to make sure that you've got a fairly low amount of solids in your tank. Um, might as well give a shout out right away to Rachel O'Leary, Girl Talks Fish, and Alexander Hamilton. Not Hamilton, Alexander, excuse me, Alexander, what's his name? Not Alexander Hamilton. Alexander, uh, Williamson? It's The Secret History Living in Your Aquarium. That's his channel name. They are very helpful in their information, and the way they deliver it is all different. They all three of them have a different way of delivering it, and Alexander, he really gets into it. Um, that that business of having total dissolved solid meters and checking your TDS and obsessing over it, he really gets into that on one of his episodes, and I'm not going to bother. But it's just really, it's not something you throw out the window, but you got to know your tank and what's in there. And if your solids are coming from, excess mulm, or from freshly breaking down plants from being immersed, or you've got a lot of algae buildup that's getting knocked around. Um, you just maybe you've got Indian almond leaves that are freshly breaking down, or just any number of things that could bring up your TDS and make you think, oh God, something's wrong. So I wouldn't stress that too much, but making sure that you don't have a lot of free floating solids in the water, and nothing that could contribute to that in the tank when breeding initiates for day 1 and day 2. It's crucial, because they're going to visit those areas of biofilm and detritus, and if there's anything other than a bit of algae mixed in, they're just going to choke on it and die. And I've seen that happen a lot, especially in tanks that have dragonstone and tanks that have sand. So I can imagine anybody with a dirted tank is pretty much SOL. Let's see, and you know these are all goes again. I just want to say it all goes back to mortality rates. You know, any one of these things are helpful, and any one of these things might get you going. But if you want to really have you know low mortality rates, in my experience, then you gotta do all of these things and take note of all these things. So you know the algae presence got to be strong. It's got to be there. Um, you know, you want to have it on your intake. You want to, you know, your plumbing of your filter up high in areas that'll be visited for a fresh scope of oxygen, like right here. Boom. Um, just a quick visit is very helpful for fry. You know, in, the first week. Uh, just being able to go anywhere and get a bit of food is clutch. You really don't want to have a tank that's super clean. You know, going back to the glass tank, it doesn't matter how much biofilm is on there. If there's not a bit of detritus and some algae, um, a bit of mulm, maybe some wood to chew on, in that first few weeks, you're going to run into trouble. Absolutely. Um, you want to have multiple surfaces, basically, and the ones that I would recommend would be smooth rock. Definitely smooth rock, number one. Sword plants would be number two. They'll go back to where they were born. It's not preferred. They like to break out about 6 inches from where they hatch right off the bat. They don't like coming back to that place. They'll visit it weeks after, but it's usually right off the bat. They just take off. They want to just keep going, but they'll stay within the area that they were born in. They don't bounce out more than 6 inches in the first, I'd say, 3 days, and then like day 4 and beyond, it's like a foot, and then you know obviously your tank's not that big, so they just start getting the lay of the land by you know the third week. I'd say second week, third week, somewhere around there. They'll be comfortable going everywhere, but those first few days when they're born, there isn't the presence of all these items and all these surfaces in different areas. You're going to have high mortality rates and a poor success. And the female is not stupid. She's not just going to dump all of her eggs on your sword plants. She's going to put them on leaves, on wood, on anubias, on your plumbing, on your heater, on your tubing. If you've got an algae scraper in there, anything, they'll just mix it up because they want the territories to be different for the hatchlings because that gives them the most success. So if you're giving the auto many different surfaces to visit to spawn on, you're going to have a lot of high numbers, really high numbers. You're going to be shocked. So smooth rock would be number 1 on that list. Sword plant would be number 2. And then glass would be number 3. And then after that, you've got cholla wood, Malaysian driftwood, slate, and then, you know, in weeks beyond that, first, you know, say that first week, week 2, they're going to be chewing petrified wood. They're going to be chewing rock. They're going to be looking for that stuff to chew on. So petrified wood would be good over I think I mentioned already dragon rock, or anything that breaks down, that you know breaks down. Get that the hell out of there, or don't put your young autos in that tank. Um, then Anubias root is something that they like to have a chew on, and um that is definitely week two um, behavior. So you know, the first few days up until week two, rock, glass, sword plant, cholla wood, Malaysian driftwood, slate are up there as far as objects that they're going to want to lay their eggs on and have fry visiting. And then like on week two, if you've got a few pieces of petrified wood and Indian almond leaf, um, they're gonna want to visit that and have a nice chew. And the Anubias root is part of that. So those three towards the end are very helpful. In the later weeks. Uh, they're going to obviously go to other plants, but I've found that it's more about having a chew. So if they want to visit a plant, they're not gonna chew the skin off it. They're not destructive. This is like the best algae eater that you can get in a tank, I think. Um, and I've been keeping fish for about 36 years now, and I think that this is just a game changer of a fish for anybody that doesn't have them, or that sees this fish in the store and thinks it's a Chinese algae eater. Um, this is just an amazing fish. So it, you should definitely look into getting one tank set up so that you can have these, and later on in a community tank. And then if you want to go and breed them, then you can go ahead and visit this video and come back to it and say, all right, I'll check these things off the list one at a time and see what I can do, because everybody's got different items in their house to work with. Not everybody's going to have all this stuff, but you bite at it over the years and you end up getting just about all of it. So if I mentioned something you don't have, like I said, again, it's not mandatory. It's just these are all the things that culminated in high numbers for me. Pieces of lava rock are common at least in a smart aquarium, in my opinion. It is not helpful to the auto. It is not helpful to the auto fry. So you don't have to avoid it. You don't have to pull it, but don't expect anything great to happen out of it. And some of the chambers are thin enough that they can break, and again create that kind of solid environment that chokes them out and kills them when they're young. So yeah, if you've got lava rock, maybe just make sure that it's something well worn. Like, I don't know if you're a person that's got a lot of lava rock, maybe you've got bristlenose, or you've got placos, or you've got autos, or you got something in there that's having a chew on these things. You'll notice a difference when you buy one new and when you've had one in a tank with a placo. Obviously one of those stones that's been heavily chewed on is okay. I wouldn't put anything new in an environment with young fry, because they're just going to choke on it. Eco Complete is the substrate I've had the most success with, and that is basically lava rock. So there's there's kind of a paradox there, isn't there? But I believe that it's just much more cleaner. It's a cleaner rock. It's been well picked at by the um, biology that they grow it in, and it's not really a place that they hang out in when they get hatched either. It's not a place they visit. They wouldn't go, oh, let me swim over onto that substrate and have a chew. They would rather go onto the glass, or they'd rather go onto, you know, your heater or your intake or a piece of foam or some wood or any of the things that I mentioned, other than a piece of lava rock. So it's not the end of the world to have the substrate, but to have large pieces, I would not recommend, because large pieces break down, and they just they make those solids that'll probably kill the young fry in larger numbers than you want. Uh, so we talked about I talked about the silicates, that they should be avoided. Um, you know, and obviously dirt would be the worst. Um, when you're when you're when you're having this tank with just a pair of autos, you're going to find you got a lot of messiness going on from excess light, because um, there's nothing going on. You're not doing any cleanup, so you're trying to grow algae. You should know that shrimp, especially Neocaridina, are absolutely helpful, and I think um, almost symbiotic, because, excuse me, um, they don't ever predate the the eggs, and whenever I have seen a shrimp go anywhere near an egg, it's to clean it. And I've seen, um, I think, eggs that were not viable, that were starting to grow fungus and stuff. I'd see the shrimp come by and start picking the fungus off and cleaning the egg up. And I've seen that behavior on healthy eggs too. So um, that's something to take note of. You got, you know, you're starting to look at a mess, whether it's a mature tank or a new tank, and you're following these steps and you want somebody else in there. Yeah, Neocaridina, but not in, you know, large numbers, you know, just in a reasonable number. Um, you know, um, one per 6 square inches would be, you know, reasonable, somewhere around there. Yeah, as far as your plumbing goes, uh, I think you can see clearly in this video, I've got this cheap thing I got on Amazon. It's just a shrimp-proof intake that you can slip on your existing intakes for most of your um, hang on the back filters, and it works. I'll give it to them, it works, but it's got a crude, pretty inflexible channel. If your size is off, you're screwed. And the silicone ring, the white ring there on the top there, it's poor. There's nothing good about it, but it gets the job done. What I did in my other tanks was I went and got some stainless steel sheet on Amazon, and then I just went and got you know, some basic heavy scissors. I got myself a nice pair of metal shears, but you know, any heavy pair of scissors will do. And I cut a nice chamber, oversized chamber, siliconed it with one seam, both sides, and then I plugged it top and bottom with filter foam, and then I just put a hole on the top end of the filter foam to get the intake in. and then slip my intake into everything from the FX4 to the 6 to my hang on the back filters, some of the small canister filters like the 407, the O series, any one of them. But it works a hell of a lot better than this thing. Twice the size right off the bat, and again, you just cut the size. You cut as big as the intake you want, and yeah, it's awesome. I'm gonna leave a link in the description for a few of these things, and that'll be one of them, because there's different diameter holes in the mesh, and you want, I think it's 0.8, but I don't want to say for sure. But I will find it and I'll look it up and add it to my channel. I'm not very technically savvy, and you'll have to excuse me. I might not do things on my channel very vibrantly or quickly, but eventually it will get there. So you want that intake on your filter shrimp proof. Okay, gotta happen. These fry are just gonna get sucked right in. It'll be lights out. This is what works for me. People use filter foam and just put it over their intake. It clogs in like a week. It's totally aggravating. I tend to have a mouth, so I have to watch it. But yeah, it's very aggravating. If you want a permanent solution, and you've got Neocaridina or Auto or Placo or somebody that's going to visit it and clean it up, this is it. This works, and it works well. And anything that passes through, especially if you got a canister filter, I mean, you probably have yearly maintenance on your canister filter if you got one of these things on it. Yeah, going back to successes here, overfiltration, I can't stress enough, has been one of the more important things. Really, it's up there. Not necessarily a high current, but a higher current is preferred. Definitely, a higher current is preferred, and you can get away with just a strong filter with like a spray bar, and say you get something where you've got everything diffused, you got an angel tank set up, or a discus, and you're not doing any of this stuff because that's just not happening. Well, you can get away with it. It's just they prefer a stronger current. It's not a game breaker, but having the overfiltration, it really is a game changer. You're going to get much better successes with breeding, with the small fry that are to their respirations are so fast, and their lungs are so small. The particles that are floating around in the tank, just any one of them, that's it. It's it. It's dead. And if it happens to settle on a piece of biofilm or detritus or algae that they're about to eat, that's it. They might not even die right away. It gets stuck. Day 1 and 2, it gets stuck in their first movement, and you can actually see it. You can see the bulge, and yeah, it sucks. You don't want to see that happen. So yeah, overfiltration is important. These foam filters that people like to use, the bubblers. This here on the right is one of them here. They're very helpful, and most breeders, especially if you're, say you're doing Neocaridina in another tank, um, or any shrimp for that matter. Uh, they're awesome. Not enough if you're doing autos. Not enough. You gotta have. This was bare minimum here. I got two of these running full blast and a hang on the back filter, and it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to keep the particulates down to get the kind of numbers that I thought would be considered a success. And also, it was with the control group, so I knew that she was putting out the same numbers anyway. And um, I made efforts to provide the surfaces that I discussed. Nothing was different in this particular tank, um, other than substrates, and it was a big difference in mortality rates. So uh, that absolutely had to do with not getting those pieces of silicate, you know, or agitating them for that matter, and just having them out. So you don't want to have just those bubblers. They're just not. It's not going to cut it. Um, a uh, a good light is very important for having good numbers. It's not very important for having numbers. This tank has one of the poorest lights you can get. It's like it's one of those submersible LEDs. It's just terrible. So yeah, it was what had to be done because this is a very unique tank, and I couldn't get a glass top, and I'm not messing with glass. I, I messed with sheet metal all my life, but for some reason I'm just not messing with glass, so I'm not doing that. So I got these submersible lights in there, and they're terrible. They do not contribute to a good circadian rhythm for the fish. This has not helped. Um, this has not helped the fry. This has been a hindrance to the fry. I know it has. But I want to point out that uh, altering the light rapidly off to blue or to bright has never caused large amounts of stress in these fish. Now that might be because these fish don't know threats, they've never experienced threats, so they might attribute it to like a flash of like lightning, or what they would attribute to be lightning. Um, I've never just cut the light off and left it off. That might be a stress, but some of these lights, you you got dim, full blast, or blue, and switching between them is not easy. So I want you to know this isn't ideal, but it can be done. So if you got one of those lights, yeah, not ideal, but it can work. Circadian rhythm is helpful in getting higher numbers. So if you really want to go, um, you know, and get really good numbers out of your autos, and you're sick of seeing poor numbers, this is something that will contribute to that. And I would recommend a Fluval 3.0. They base on their smallest model at $150. Really expensive. In my experience, you get every single penny worth. It's amazing to be able to program every single moment of your lighting schedule. Is just something else. And you can create a sunrise and a sunset at any interval that you want. You can have it last 3 hours, 1 hour, 20 minutes, uh, 1 minute if you want. So the range that you can create, from Lake Malawi to bright river waters to black waters to Amazon River to some more show color like this that you get out of the blue and whites. You can set that. You can change that. Every single LED is interchangeable. It's a blue, a red, a white. It's amazing. The thing's amazing. Um, I've got I've got two of the largest model on my show. I've got two of the mid model on my breeders. Uh, so six of those total, and I've got two on my two of the smaller models on my 20 gallons, the talls and the longs. I've got two longs and one tall, and they've doubled up as well. You can get risers and just get away with one, but they'll last forever, and you interchange them. And if you got an addiction like me, you're gonna love them from day one, and you're gonna use them forever. So, the more the merrier. I like to double them up. You obviously don't have to. Just having one of these is it's like the biggest stress reduction that you could possibly offer your fish, in my opinion. Having a proper transition from light to darkness, especially for a young fry, is very helpful. Very, very helpful. It is no different than within humans. Their behaviors, the way that the time in which they prefer to feed, it all revolves around that rhythm. If you set it, if you're just a person that flicks it on and flicks it off at the end of the day, well, that's never going to take place. None of that stuff's going to happen. They might try to, they might get used to a certain time when you do that, but it's never going to truly be a transition that they respect and appreciate. So until somebody else is smart and makes another programmable light, the only other option at this point is the 3.0. So I would highly recommend, if you're looking to breed autos, that you go ahead and get one, at least one. I will. I'll post my lighting schedule for my fluvalves, and I'll add that to the description and the link. And I think that's pretty much. That's pretty much about it. Oh yeah, well, that's the other thing too. Okay, so another big stress reducer that I've noticed, absolutely, definitely noticed a difference. Black backgrounds. A painted black background in your tank, it produces like cave environment for them. Anything, any fish, they all think it's like safe zone. I haven't seen that kind of behavior with blue. I haven't seen it with any other colors. I've seen people on YouTube with all kinds of colors. I've had blue myself. I haven't got anything crazier than blue and black, and black is just amazing stress reducer. So maybe you don't have that budget right now for a fluval. Maybe you're going to focus on some of the other things that I talked about first. Well, you can go right ahead and go to Home Depot, go to the paint counter, ask the guy to mix you up a sample of Black Bear Flat Black, and exterior, and you're good to go. Get yourself a little roller, get yourself that little sample, come back home, roll it on the back. It's that simple. It's not hard. You can do 3 coats and you'll be satisfied. The only the only area that can become a problem, I'll see if I can get the camera on it, is on the lip. Let's see if I can get the. Oh, I don't think the camera is gonna get it. Let's see here. Oh yeah, it does. And I can see kind of like an upside down mountain there in white. That's the area that the paint just didn't get into, and the underside flange of the lid, the rim of the tank. So obviously, if you got a rimless tank, that's not going to be a problem. But if you've got a rim tank, this is typically going to happen. So you want to take like a playing card or something like that, and try to shove the paint in there as you're going along that first coat. You'll prevent what happened there. I didn't really give a hoot because this was just a small tank. But yeah, black background, big help, and that's very cheap. Doesn't cost much to make that happen. Huge stress reducer, in my opinion. Um, Going back to that first few days, when you've got day 0 where the tail breaks through the egg yolk at like hour 6, maybe somewhere around there, maybe hour 5, and then it can stretch on to as much as a day later. It all depends on the viability of the egg, but like a healthy egg is going to go pretty quick, and you'll see that tail bust out, and you've got like a window there. Once that tail comes out, like maybe 30 hours less, maybe 20 hours, where there'll be no eating. It'll just all be relying on that yolk that is ever so shrinking as the hours go by. As its tail pops out of that egg, the egg literally turns into the yolk, which feeds the fry. And as you see it disappear, in my other videos, I tried to show the transition from the yolk becoming the stomach. Eventually, that's what it does, become the stomach, and that's real critical time. Real critical time. The the um, the food that is within the tank is a make or break for the fry. In the I believe day 1 video, I talked about spirulina, and I'm sorry if I went back and played on my phone and saw that none of the text I wrote is there. It's so aggravating. I guess maybe if you're on PC you can blow up my chat, but I was typing during those streams, so it's like aggravating that you can't see it on a phone or whatever. But so in that video I texted about my use of spirulina and what happens if they actually happen to find some. And it's tricky on that first day um, if they're breaking free of the sword, they hop onto the piece of glass. It's not likely they're gonna get any. They happen to not do that, and they go onto a piece of wood or something that is more vertical in your tank, like like up the top side of that filter foam or something like that. Well, then they're going to get a piece of that spirulina, and then that's lights out for your mortality rate in that particular fry. Its stomach is going to blow up, and its uh, growth rate is going to skyrocket. It's like putting it on a steroid, and literally overnight you'll see a difference in size between one fry that has had access to it and one fry that hasn't within hours. It really is a game changer. So the introduction of spirulina in a small amount on day one is very important. Um, I would continue to dose a small amount every day for the first 4 days. And when you do it, you should do it like an hour to 2 hours before lights out. Just generally in a time where um, uh, their activity should be heightened. A dusk type of scenario. Mornings, not so much. You want to, if you've got the 3.0 and you're already set up with your sunrise and sunset. Feeding in the morning, I haven't had any real happiness doing or success doing. Noticing behavioral differences with them being more active. They tend to be more active right around now, and I think you're seeing that on camera. I think we're about 2 hours into where lights would normally be out for them. So this is, typical lights out behavior for them. Their lights are on, so they're a little confused, but they're displaying the behavior nonetheless because it's just one night of me doing this. So, yeah, the first 4 days, adding a small amount is important. You're going to end up creating, a buildup, and that's okay. It's algae at the end of the day. And again, if you've got heavy filtration, most of your ammonia that's getting created or phosphates that's getting created should be getting handled by that. And if not, then there's other videos for that. But there's plenty of other things you can put in your filter nowadays aside from a piece of carbon. So when you're trying to create a molmy algae infested environment, you got to realize your phosphates are going to go up. So you got to get some phosphates in there, or you go ahead and get yourself some Phosbond, which is what I personally like to use. And then you can just grab it in the filter. So yeah, there's that. After day 4, you pretty much want to go every other day. What I've been doing is feeding these guys every other day up until week 3, and then I went ahead and I stopped. And as you can see, there's plenty to eat in the tank. And as far as I'm concerned, adding a spirulina regimen at this point isn't really helpful. It's more of a detriment to the quality of the water, and it's not really going to help them grow much more rapidly than they already have. It's really more about the first 3 weeks, getting those intestines, the body parts grown properly. Like you'd say, like nutritionally wise, like their spine is a certain length that it should be, and their intestines are a certain diameter that they should be, and all that stuff. It's all set by week 3. You're not going to get, changing much else after that. Now that nutrition wise still helps them. But in a tank like this, you can clearly see there's plenty of food for them, and they're primarily an algae eater. So they've certainly transitioned at that point right now at week 4 to be able to do that. And you can clearly see them doing that. So it's not something you have to do. Um, it can be something that you supplement. I'm a fan of using tablets for my neocaridina. So they can obviously smell that when it hits the floor of the tank, and they might be a little shy when all the neocaridina come hogging it. But later on, when they're all full and start walking away and the numbers dissipate from the tablet, you will see these autos come and visit that and have some, even at this young age. So if you've got a lot of shrimp, you probably don't have a lot of autos because they were agitating your shrimp the whole time and didn't really give them a chance. Your shrimp were agitating your autos and didn't really give them a chance to grow up. That's something that you can have happen. You don't want. It was going back to that 1 per 6 inches thing. You don't want to have a whole bunch of shrimp running around your substrate and climbing your walls and literally climbing over your autos on those first 3 weeks. Just a few is helpful. A mono shrimp, I'm on the fence. Really, I've got them in the one breeder that I've got spawning and happening now, um, and I'm going to try to pay more attention to what they do when they visit an egg. But it's really tough. I mean, you've got to when they're producing healthy eggs, they're spawning quickly. It's hard to catch that window. I was pretty excited to be able to catch what I caught in that 2-minute trailer clip on my channel. It was hard to get that. But if I can just visually see it myself, not trying to film it, I'll definitely update. But I'm going to say no on a mono shrimp. That egg sac is just too sensitive, and they're pickers, and they pick hard, and they might not pick at the egg, but they might pick at the film that's stuck the egg to the sword. So yeah, and then if it's on something that's not sword to begin with, not plant matter, as on a piece of wood or a leaf or plumbing or something like that, and then they go and pick at it, it's probably just going to fall right off. So I'd say no on a monos, and obviously Caridina would be a no as well, because they're much bigger, and their parameters are they're too tricky as far as trying to match with the autos. It'd be better just to have your Caridina somewhere else and not do this. Put your adult autos in with your Caridina. That's fine. Just don't bring in your Caridina to your fry. That's not cool. But the Neo Caridina all day. Yeah, very helpful. So yeah, I mean that pretty much covers most of what I had to say. When they get older, as adults, aside from those spirulina tablets, you can feed them algae wafers and shrimp tablets. I find are helpful. Algae wafers are an excellent choice. I just think that the spirulina tablets, again, they're just like they're a better boost to the overall health of your fish that eats it. So it's just kind of better food. If you can you can get your autos just eating the spirulina tablets. Kudos to you. They like a variety of things, so if it works out for you, good. If not, then definitely I would go back to what I said. You know, all the surfaces that I spoke of. Malaysian driftwood is really important when they get adults. They gotta have a chew on Malaysian driftwood. If you got autos in a tank without Malaysian driftwood and you've watched this video, you're on notice that you're in the wrong. They gotta have a good chew on that wood, and that thin stuff's no good. The Cholo woods, you know, okay, but the surface is not there for them to have a proper chew. You know, if you're going to be somebody that watches most of my videos, eventually you're going to see one of my larger pieces of driftwood that they've actually created like a colony on, where like half of the wood is like a nice mulmy algae, and the other half is just picked clean, is totally chewed down to fresh wood, and that's the way they like it. If you don't have that kind of an environment, yeah, it's not going to work out for you, for the adults. They're going to be very unhappy. So yeah, Malaysian driftwood. And then, you know, like down here I've got, I'll get a pan down. This, as you can see, they're all over the glass. They want nothing to do with the substrate, but when they were fry, let's see if I can get this camera down. When they were fry, all they wanted to do was hang out in that cholla wood and underneath what's left of that almond leaf. That's all they wanted to do. I think on week 2, I introduced a couple pieces of wood right there. The one with the zip tie on it that I had in another tank. That it was just coated with algae and biofilm and detritus. So I knew it was a good food source, and it wasn't doing anything in the tank. And I was excited. I had fry, and they weren't doing so good in these conditions with the sand. So I added those in, and I believe that helped save a few of them, because they were going into that cholla wood, and as you can see, the cholla wood is picked dry. There's nothing on there, and that was their home. They all seemed to eventually congregate in there, and I don't think that they were a fan of touching that sandy substrate. And as soon as they did, they went to the middle of my tank here where I got the academia soil, and they went into the chara wood. I wouldn't say that they've come back and gone in there ever again since. So there's different like phases of food sources, different ages for these fry. So you just got to provide a lot of different surfaces, and you know, this is an example of one that I provided. And see, shoulder wood was just not enough. They picked it clean. They wanted to go to the driftwood that's to the left, and that's where they ended up. That was a big help. And then they went straight to the glass after week 2, and they pretty much stay on the glass now. They visit the filter foam, and they visit the intake and my plumbing and the heater, but they're not a fan right now of having a chew. They're not going hog wild trying to get onto that wood and chew it all up. But that's what they'll do in a few more weeks. In a few more weeks, that's all they'll want. So it is present in the tank, it's not very helpful right now. You might see some of the things that I suggested never being visited or used, and I just want to stress that that's why. They will all be used at different phases if you add them and use them. Uh, so that's pretty much it. Maybe try to get some film, try to get some closer film of these guys. Maybe try to see if I can get distinguishment of the male size and the female size fry, uh, so that you can see for yourself. But it's going to be tough with this lighting, and again, it's not ideal lighting, and I don't plan on doing it. This is going to be a vivarium. Once these fry are old enough, I'm going to get them out, and this is going to be a vivarium because it's a terrible tank. Just too small. I don't like the diameter, and I can't do anything with the top. My lighting is terrible. So yeah, enough complaints about that. But I'm just not going to be doing anything with this tank again on camera. So this is pretty much it. I will try to get a closer look at some of these guys, but it's going to be difficult with this lighting. But again, I just wanted to thank you for watching, and thanks for the support. It's a new channel. I don't expect to be making any waves. I just I knew that I've got something good going on here, and I wanted to share that on YouTube because there's a lot of people just complaining about it, just having poor success with breeding autos and asking why. And I didn't really go into too much about the things that caused that to happen. I try to focus on the things that helped that in this stream, but you know, I did cover some of them, and you don't need to go ahead and look those up. All you need to do is just try to do some of the things that I discussed in this video, and I think you'll have higher success rates. And if you happen to do all of them, you're going to have really high numbers. I'm going to go back probably day 6, so in maybe like 2 days, or day 7 and 3 days, and film the breeder again, just to give everybody a look at the fry on their first week. In the last video I discussed that day 4 was pretty much the hump day for mortality rates and catastrophes from particulates, and there's not much else really to watch. They're so busy and voracious going around the tank. It's hard to film them up close like I was when they were first born. But I will try on day 7 to just try to get a picture of them size-wise for comparison on their first week. And then maybe I'll go back on week 2, so that we'll have a total of week 1, 2, and 3 covered, and then this is week 4 right here. So probably stop there because this is it. I mean, they're almost adults at this point, and they're really tiny, but they're performing all the functions that they would as an adult. So they're ready to go into another tank. If you wanted to do that, you would definitely want to drip acclimate them. You would never want to put a fish this small immediately into different parameters. And on that note, I should talk about the parameters that I think are most important. And I think that number 1 is temperature, really, of all the parameters. You want to be between 74 and 75 degrees. Now, That's probably why a lot of people are seeing um, higher mortality rates, not having good success because they're not running at those temperatures. That's what you need to run on. 74 to 75 degrees. Now, my pH meter dropped on the floor the other day. Um, I don't believe that it's giving me such an accurate reading anymore. I have a Milwaukee pH meter submersible. I was planning on putting it in my show tank, but I think for the sake of my streams and to close out, um, the parameters and get them for sure for anybody that's been watching this playlist, I will put in that meter in my breeder and get a solid pH number. Right now, what I think I'm running at is around 5.8, but I think it's skewed. I might be more like 6.2. So I would say what's working for me is between, 6 and 6.5. Now, it dips down when you get a lot of the phosphate buildup. Even if you're grabbing it in a filter, you're going to lower your pH a little bit. Um, I'm not a chemist. I can't tell you exactly how that takes place, but it's going to go down a little bit, and then you get gassing off of your hydrogen. So just over time it's going to drop. So just so you know, at 5.8 you're still not in a bad zone, and I know that in a lot of college papers, articles that I've read, they all highly recommend that you be around 6.5 to 7. So take that for what it's worth. I know that it's stipulated in many of those articles that some species prefer lower pHs. Now, I am not an expert on Otocinclus by any means, and I'm not a biologist, and I don't have a college background, so I can't tell you for certain. But I would assume that this is one of those species. I run low. My tanks are heavily planted, and I also am using electrolysis in some of my tanks, and I just run low. So I could tell you that at 5.8, or if this thing's off by 2 points, 5.6, you're okay. You're all right. So ideally, I would say, for the record, 6.5, fair. Is fair statement. If you run lower, don't worry about it. You're probably doing better than if you run higher. My TDS is 400. Now, going back to Alexander Williamson's channel and his video on TDS, and other people's videos on TDS, it's not usually an accurate representation of what's necessarily floating around in your tank. So I know what's floating around in my tank, and it's particles from plant matter decomposing. So I've got a small amount coming from my Eco Complete, and I've got a large amount coming from my plant life that's breaking down. Only one of those is going to be a killer, and like when I said before earlier, you have large stones, that's when you're going to have problems. And when you have it buried in your substrate, I don't think you will, especially when you have, start to have a cycle going on in there. You actually have organisms on that surface, detritus, biofilm, all that. So Yeah, that's that's pretty much it. Let me see if I can close things out here by getting a couple camera angles. I just had one swim onto the front pane of the glass, so I'm going to try to get a stomach view of a week 4. And thank you for watching, and I will post links and in my comment section. Okay, so I believe that is the male, and I'm going to go ahead and just pan over to the female that's next to him to show you difference in size. See if that can be captured. Again, that's what I believe to be a female. Okay. And then right over here, male. Right? Yeah, see the maybe a slight difference in coloration, right? Slight difference in size, but other than that, nothing else. Just a slight difference in the growth and color. But otherwise, you wouldn't know. I can't hold the camera and do this at the same time. I'm gonna back out. Uh, You know, they probably prefer smoother surfaces right now because their rasping teeth are still developing. So when they go and chew on a piece of wood, they end up damaging, you know, that those little fine teeth. So they probably prefer having to chew on something like this, um, you know, piece of smooth metal, because there's nothing that really fights back on them. Notice how you don't see them going onto the mesh, but she likes a smooth surface. See, now this auto just came to visit that piece of silicone ring. So it's again going back to my point of having multiple surfaces, and especially smooth ones, when the fry are young, is a big help. Okay, I think that's it. I apologize for the poor lighting. Uh, Obviously, the fry and other tanks are under better lighting, and they are going to reach this age because I did a good job and they're healthy. So um, the day will come when I will get better film, um, of a more middle-aged fry. I apologize that I can't really get the best film tonight. This is a little better though, huh? Yeah, it's just not getting the clarity that I want, that I was getting from other videos. It's uh, the poor lighting in this tank. I'm almost better on my zoom out, which is not good. Yeah, it's definitely a better look, but I would like to be getting much closer video. So I'm probably going to stop here because as good as that might look, I know I can do better. So appreciate you watching, and I hope that this was helpful. And I will be adding this all to one playlist, and I hope that it helps somebody out. Let's see, maybe get a side profile here of one on my intake.